I was always very modest, really didn't think of myself as being particularly smart or unusual. I just thought I was more interested in certain topics than other people, but that sometimes I find a technical subject just becomes absolutely fascinating to me. I can't think about anything else. When you learn a new computer technology, you can immediately put it to work by writing the software and be able to do things you couldn't do before. That I'm amazingly productive during these times. I can write amount of software programs that would take a normal person months and months to write, and I can just do it in a few days because I'm so excited and driven and obsessed with it. It's always been something unique that I've had. That was a lot of what has made me decide to work with computers, because that is what I have done throughout my career.
The innovators, the rule breakers, the misfits, not the status quo. This is
Thriller Lightning.
Hey, what's up, plebs? So we just finished up another Thriller Lightning episode here at Capital Factory. Getting ready to launch two of our friends' businesses into the Bitcoin ecosystem. By the time this comes out, some of you may have already heard the news via Twitter and other places, but Lightning Escrow goes live at the Austin Bitcoin Club Pleb Symposium this Thursday, January 6th. Yeah, it was a good conversation. It was a bit challenging for me, honestly, a bit more technical oriented for a conversation than I'm personally used to. I tend to find myself in more free-flowing kind of philosophical conversations on podcasts more than anything else, but trying to be conversational in the direction of the kind of CEO of PlebLab here. I was trying to think very critically and ask the tough questions to figure out what we needed to figure out so that we could best guide our plebs in PlebLab in the right direction. What we really want for these guys is for them to be able to come out of PlebLab a successful company, not just in having gotten funding, but in being successful leaders so that they can take that money and go and build the business that we know they can build. Lightning Escrow has a lot of potential. I'm really bullish on the team, really bullish on the project. And in this podcast, you'll find out why. So grab your popcorn, get a coffee, whatever it is you're into, and enjoy. This is a brief conversation, and I think you guys are going to dig it. We'll see you at the Austin Bitcoin Club Symposium here on Thursday, January 6th. Much love, y'all.
No blind spots in the leopard's eyes can only help to jeopardize the lives of lambs. The shepherd cries, and out to life for a silverfish, eternal dust. Let's ticklish.
I liked him a lot as a person. Honestly, there could not have been a better business partner I could have stumbled across, because he's everything like I've ever wanted for a business partner, and just as a friend as well.
Oh, thank you, Tristan.
Yeah, we just really hit it off, and I thought we would make a great team together, and I had to convince him to actually start a company with him, because he was more so leaning towards, what was it again you wanted to do?
Just freelance work.
Freelance work.
Give it away for free.
Yeah.
That's the super kind of way. I've built this cool thing. Somebody else should just take it and build it.
Yeah, I for most of my clients, I write a piece of software, and then they pay me to write the software, and then I release it as free and open source so that anyone can use it, which is the same thing we're doing here, but here I'm also part of a company, so that's a little different for me.
I'm pumped for you, though.
Yeah, but after convincing him and seeing how big this opportunity is, I'm leaning towards more company aspect of this.
Which is nonsense, but he lies on his side. Is he trying to hide? In fact, it's the earth, which is nonsense, but he lies.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second season of Thrill of Lightning with your host, the Bitcoin Bum. I swear to God, if anybody stops me again, I'm going to punch that person in the face because this podcast has begun.
Hooah!
All right. So anyways, today we have Tristan and my main man, Super, in to talk about a brand new Bitcoin Lightning project known as...
Lightning Escrow. Happy to be here, Kyle.
Thank you.
Happy to be here as well.
Lightning Escrow. And I am also glad that both of you are here. So let's just jump right into it. How did you two meet? Let's get a little bit into the kind of the origins, if you will, of Lightning Escrow. And then we'll go from there.
Sure. So before I actually met Dan, I worked in sales, selling homes, and I was on the forefront of all of the banking issues that were in place with the mortgage industry. So I kind of realized that mortgages take way too long to process, and I thought, what if there was a way to process mortgages in like a week versus 3 to 4 months for the customer to sign everything and get the payment through. And at the same time, after I was thinking that, and around that time, that's actually when I met Super at the ABC Club. And from there, we just kind of hit it off and decided that, hey, we should work together on an escrow application using Lightning because it makes the most sense. And using Lightning would make it much more faster and a lot more affordable for people to use and get their titles for anything. And not just titles for homes or cars. It also expands out to marketplaces and things like freelancer.com, places like eBay, StockX, and the like.
So you came from a banking background?
Banking and sales, yes.
Banking and sales. Who'd you work for?
I worked for J. Michael Fine Homes.
Okay, I have no idea who that is, but cool. So you were working banking and finance, and mostly in home sales. You were actually
mostly in home
working,
sales.
like, specifically in mortgaged back.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Then you landed at an Austin Bitcoin Club meetup. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious how in that crowd you actually just kind of managed to stumble across Super in that crowd where like the one guy who's working on Lightning software that kind of happens to work perfectly with like what you were thinking about working on to kind of solve the problem you're seeing from inside the institutions. Like, how did that connection kind of take place?
Well, mostly by chance because I've been going to multiple meetups for a while now, and ABC is one of them, one of the better ones, honestly. And when I got there, I was, networking with everybody, and I saw Super in the corner talking to some people who didn't look very professional with their with what they were talking about. So I approached him, and I was like, "Man, this guy just looks smart." So we started talking. He told me he was working on a escrow application for HODL Contracts.
Yeah, HODL Contracts is the name of the protocol.
And then from there, I kind of realized like, wow, this guy is already working on what I wanted to make. So
can I cut in real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
For a handful of people like myself and or other like less in the know, can you give us just a bit of some context? Like what is a HODL contract?
Sure. Yeah, it's a type of Lightning payment. So when you're making a Lightning payment, you usually have to pay an invoice. Somebody generates an invoice on their device, and then you like scan it or paste it into your device and pay it. One of the types of invoices you can create on the Lightning Network is called a HODL invoice, which is where the recipient of the money or any intermediary node on the route between the sender and the recipient can delay the settlement of the payment. It's like, we're just not going to settle it yet. So they call it HODLing because you're not doing anything with the money yet. So you delay the settlement of the invoice until some event has transpired, and then after that event, you either settle the invoice or cancel it. So using that functionality, we can do this thing called HODL contracts, or you can do escrow. And so I called it HODL contracts because it's based on HODL invoices.
Cool. So yeah, sorry to cut you off, but you meet Super. He's working on HODL contracts, which works out perfectly for escrow. And where did it go from there?
So from there, we kind of just hit it off, him and I. I liked him a lot as a person. And honestly, there could not have been a better business partner I could have stumbled across because he's everything like I've ever wanted for a business partner. And just as a friend as well.
Oh, thank you, Tristan.
No problem. And yeah, we just really hit it off. And I thought we would make a great team together. And I had to convince him to actually start a company with him because he was more so leaning towards, what was it again you wanted to do?
Just freelance work.
Freelance work.
Give it away for free.
Yeah.
That's the Super kind of way. I've built this cool thing. Somebody else should just take it and build it.
Yeah, I for most of my clients, I write a piece of software and then they pay me to write the software and then I release it as free and open source so that anyone can use it, which is the same thing we're doing here. But here I'm also part of a company. So that's a little different for me.
I'm pumped for you, though. That should be pretty awesome.
Yeah, but after convincing him and seeing how big this opportunity is, I think he's leaning towards more of the company aspect of this. And from there, we just worked on it for the past couple months, almost 3 now, and here we are.
It could not possibly be 3 months. That's a long time.
It has been 3 months.
Has it really?
Mm-hmm. I think it was late October we met, like October 15th, around there. And then November, we started working on it. And then December is when we got really serious about it.
Right. Well, that's wild. You guys were talking a lot earlier than I knew, though. Because, I mean, 3 months ago would have put you at having met Super almost at the very, very beginning of PlebLab. I mean, PlebLab is only 3 months old, a little over 3 months old at this point. So you guys were actually working, I mean, minimally, apparently, but like you guys were already working together somewhat closely long before I knew anything about it.
Well, we just talked and he said he'd be interested in doing this thing, but we didn't actually start working on it until November.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Of course, I'd been working on HODL contracts since June. So the back end part of this was in operation for quite a while before I met Tristan.
So you were working on back end, and that had been a process you'd been working on for a while. I guess that means that the front end that's your expertise, Tristan?
Yeah, so I'm a self-taught full stack engineer. I took a data science course as well, but lately I've been leaning more towards the engineering part of design. And from there, I made the design in Figma and exported that into React code because React code is very easy to work with. But the thing is that when we were building it, we had a lot of issues with React when we were making it an actual app. So we actually just decided to go with HTML and CSS for now.
It's still using React.
Yeah, it's still, which part?
Just inside the HTML, there's a bunch of script tags that have React code in them.
Okay. That's right. But yeah, that's our stack so far.
I'm not 100% sure what any of that means, but it's very pretty and it works well. So you guys make a good team there because Super makes very delicious code. And yeah, I said it, delicious code. That stuff is magical.
Well, I would argue it's more like spaghetti code.
Sometimes it even jams.
Yes, it is. It's great code. And then that code is also highlighted beautifully in the buttery front end that you have created. So adding to that jam and butter. It's very good.
Must be around dinner time.
I know, I'm starving.
I'm not as hungry as I need to be. I'm going to have to hit the gym after this. But, okay. So you guys meet in October. You get a little bit more serious in November. We get into December. You basically, I don't think I met you until December. Well, maybe I met you late November.
I remember when we met
at this point.
I remember. We were working on it, I think, late November. And Super and I were in the lobby at Capital Factory working just normally. And you came along and you were talking to Super and asked him, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And then you saw what I was working on. and you kind of dived into it, and you really sat down with me and took a look at it. And as far as I know, you really liked it. And from there, you kind of told me like what you guys do at PlebLab, and yeah, that's how we met, you and I.
I do remember that. It was, out on floor 5. You guys were kind of, again, you were still like kind of figuring out what it was that was happening between the two of you. I think if I remember correctly, there was still like a lot of conversation around just the idea that like maybe Dan was going to kind of like sell you some of the stuff he had written and you would just have your own thing. But I'm actually really glad that it turned into a partnership, because that is what we do at PlebLab. We try to help the people in our office who have really cool ideas turn into projects, and then craft those ideas and projects into viable companies. So I'm pretty bullish on where Lightning Escrow goes from here. Going into 2022, what do you guys kind of see going forward as like your kind of objectives looking out through probably the end of Q1?
Well, obviously, the main goal is to grow this thing and to bring the world one step closer to Bitcoin standard using this tool for business. But other than that, we have a couple of surprises in place for later this year. We do not want to reveal just yet. But in terms of Lightning Escrow, we want to grow this thing as much as possible, because I made it originally because I was so frustrated with the process of escrow for not only mortgages, but for eBay as well, because when I was like, 15, 16, I was an eBay seller, and oh my God, the process for getting paid as a seller on eBay is atrocious. And PayPal, if you ever use PayPal enough, you figure it out pretty quickly that it sucks. PayPal is probably one of the worst platforms you can use for business, in my opinion.
Why?
Well, I think the main issue is that my issue was that they found out that I was underage selling on eBay. So they withheld my funds for 2 years until I was 18. And that was not cool. They were holding, I think, $5,000, which was bad. And I needed that money to buy more inventory and, make more money with it. But, PayPal decided that I wasn't old enough to understand what business was.
Yeah, the gatekeepers of all things. It's ridiculous. The fiat system is stupid. So, all right, so you've got a way to integrate something like Lightning Escrow into something like eBay, making the ability to do business much more decentralized and kind of free to anybody and everybody who's intelligent enough to make good work happen.
Yes. So the end goal is to hand off our API to marketplaces and places like Upwork and freelancer.com so that people can pay and receive Bitcoin for their work. It's different from an invoice because Upwork and eBay are the marketplaces in charge of making sure that the sellers and buyers get paid and do pay. And in between that is escrow. So when you're on, let's say, Upwork, and you're doing a job, and you do the job, you get paid. That process in between the buyer and the seller is escrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually not a whole lot more that needs to be said there. I get it. It's so basically you are acting as the escrow for a contract between two people on something like these contracting like platforms, correct?
Yes.
Fiverr and there's so many of them at this point. Cool. All right. So, I mean, that's the kind of like the longer term vision, but like I want to try and get more granular is what I was really looking for, right? So like you guys are both now part of PlebLab, and PlebLab round 1 wraps up in March, end of March. So we've got literally 2 months and like a little over 3 weeks left. What is it that you guys need to develop into this company that you believe you can become? Like what is it that PlebLab can do to benefit you guys so that we can get you on pace to graduate from this cohort with the rest of them as a company with funding?
Well, besides the funding is, anything that any company needs once they're ready with a strong foundation. You guys are doing a pretty good job at getting us out there on Twitter and other platforms to ensure that we get actual attention for our company. Pretty much ready as is now for private beta, but for the public, I'm a little more
I think exposure is one thing we need.
Yeah.
It would be really good. We don't have a lot of marketing resources, so if we can leverage some of the resources that PlebLab has to market our product to services as well as end users and grow our user base, that would be a really key thing for our growth as a company.
Where do you think the earliest stage kind of users come from? Like, where do you see as like the low hanging fruit for something like Lightning Escrow?
That's a great question. So when I was talking to Matt Odell, he was telling me about his use case, which was 3D printed parts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a market I never would have thought of because that's not my expertise. This is the best part about our application is that everybody has a different use case for them, right? So for personal use, for me, it could be something as small as, Pokemon cards. I don't collect those, but it's just an example. And for you, it can be something larger like Bitcoin miners or GPUs. So the use case really differs. But at the end of the day, the main use case is that it needs to give people a secure way to transact goods with Bitcoin.
Yeah. I know how it works and I understand like its use cases, but like, so the thing is this is something I've learned over the last couple of months that I would have had never really thought about myself until having had conversations myself and having been around other people's conversations with like venture capital. Is like one of the questions that always regularly gets asked is what is the way that you market this in a place that pushes it beyond just this like 0.1% of like your most hardcore kind of Bitcoin maximalist, right? Like we want the product. You're talking about like the complications that you saw in your industry before you became a Bitcoiner, where it was like you're seeing the challenges that are like mortgages and how long it takes to get all of this wrapped up. But obviously, maybe that's not the first place that you're going to push the marketing. Like if we're talking about leveraging PlebLab and its network, like what kind of network is the most efficient network to get something like Lightning Escrow talked about? Like where do you see the most powerful kind of place where its integration makes sense?
I don't know, but I will say this. I want to see it used in domain name transfers. And the reason why is because we had to buy a couple of domain names as we were making this application. And we used escrow.com to do these purchases. And when we were transferring from one person to another using escrow.com, it's horrendous. It's a horrendous experience. A multi-day experience for them to release the funds to you, and they take like 8%, I think. So it's huge.
The minimum is 3.5, but it gets pretty bad.
So among the kind of crowd that I roll with, there's a lot of people who need to buy domain names, and I would love them to have a much faster, much cheaper experience with that and use Bitcoin. So that's one place I'd like to see it roll out.
Another one is services. So for people like Super, I know that he's got clients besides his company, and if there was a way for Super to ensure that the client has paid before he starts the services, Lightning Escrow would be a way to ensure that he has confidence that the funds are somewhere sitting the client that can't touch.
I really like the answer services. I think that one, just from what I see looking at it, seems to be like a marketplace that exists that's probably relatively easy to market to, has probably a relatively substantial user base. Like services is like 75 to 80% of like the American economy at this point. So services makes a lot of sense. I think a question that comes to mind as we dive into, like, if we're now looking at Lightning Escrow pushing into kind of marketing towards services, I lost my train of thought. I did have a question that came up while you were speaking, but
what are some example services that might want to use escrow? That might be a good question.
That's not it either. But I mean, what was the question?
What are some services that might want to use escrow? I guess I'll answer.
Oh, sorry. Wait for me. Sorry. Sorry. I was drinking my Topo Chico. Well, one would be personal transactions between people for selling their cars and receiving the titles. Eventually, we'll add support for that. Another thing could be, besides DNS,
I think we already have support for it, because you just name what the product you're selling, and you give it a title and you give it a description, and then you send over it all gets sent to the person who's buying the thing. So I think if somebody puts in, Chevy Volt or whatever that they're selling as a car, It would seem to work, right?
Yeah, but we also take care of the legal details of the car, like the mileage, the VIN, and everything else.
Mm.
I remember my question now. So you have, right? You have this idea in the kind of the transaction line that you outlined where it's like Super doesn't want to start doing his work until he can verify that the funds have been paid into the escrow service where he knows when the project is complete that he will receive his payment, right? So a lot of what you're building, and honestly, a lot of what Bitcoin companies, as I'm seeing more and more of, is like the idea that we are building this protocol on a trustless system is fantastic, but it's much of what's getting built on the community level where these services are being built on top of this trustless monetary network is actually very backed and based on trust. So it seems that that is also something that will have to be kind of worked on and built into the early era of something like Lightning Escrow. What do you guys think as far as your kind of thought processes early on how you build that trust to be the company that people want to use versus something like a more established escrow.com? Obviously, in the early days, you have some of the competitive advantages of being faster and cheaper. That's great. But you have to also incorporate those faster and cheaper things into a trusted system. So like, what do you think about that idea?
About integrating with, you said a trusted system. I think you're meaning the current system. Is that what you mean by a trusted system?
No, I mean, like, you're working on building escrow on top of Bitcoin, which is trustless. But to use your service, people still have to kind of have trust in your service.
Sure, yeah.
So what do you think about the idea of like how a company gets started to build that early stage trust?
Well, I think the two biggest things that people can assure is that our application is non-custodial, so we physically cannot touch your money. And the second thing is it's open source. So if you really want to make sure that, we're not taking 100 sats out of every 1,000 sat transaction, they can make sure of that.
Yeah, you can view the code on GitHub, and then that will reassure you. All the backend code is available on GitHub for free, so anyone can run it as well. So that actually is a really good point, because I think people do tend to trust things more. Bitcoiners anyway tend to trust things more if they don't hear any complaints from people saying like, oh, well, this code has a huge bug in it that steals your money. That's a big issue there. So just having it open source and available for anyone to inspect starts to leverage some of those effects of an open source community.
So open source and non-custodial. Do you guys have know your customer, or is it non-know your customer?
No, the only thing we ask from the customer is an email, and you can put a fake one in there if you want.
Right. Cool. So, I mean, it hits on all of the things that most Bitcoiners are looking for. So, I mean, yeah, it is another place where I think escrow works is betting. Do you guys see you pushing into like online gambling at all, or is...
Well, maybe not online, online gambling, but we did have somebody approach us about using it for gaming, which is interesting to me.
Sure. Well, gaming is the use case he had in mind was what was that game? Rocket League. So Rocket League is a video game where it's very competitive play, and lots of people love playing that game. But the servers don't allow you to do betting on their servers, and they'll in fact ban you if they find out you're doing it. So what we were thinking, a gentleman approached us and was like, "Hey, could we do this over Discord? Like not use their servers at all. We would just run a bot on Discord where users could place bets using Bitcoin. And then like if the red team wins and the blue team loses, then the people who bet on the red team would get some money out of it. And that would be pretty cool. You could even have the players bet against each other right before they start the match. And then the escrow would take care of ensuring that the right team gets the money at the end. So that'd be pretty cool.
Also, if I recall correctly, you also developed a betting system that's separate from HODL contracts. Is that correct?
Betting? No, I didn't do a betting system. When I made HODL contracts, one of the early demos I did was how you could use it for betting.
Oh, okay.
So
That's what I remember.
I should demoed that to a lot of people, but that's just straight up one of the ways of using HODL contracts is to say like, hold this money in escrow until
Got it.
the Super Bowl, and then whichever team wins the Super Bowl, that side gets the money and the other side doesn't. So
Got it.
Yeah.
I bring it up because I mean, I think a lot of casinos could really very easily use escrow for just about everything they do inside their business model. And it is a massive marketplace across the United States of America and around the world.
I'm not so sure. One of the early people who approached me was a casino asking, they said they were interested in doing smart contracts on the Lightning Network. And I was one of the only people who was working on that. And they approached me and said they were interested in using this on their back end. But the problem with doing that is that most casinos, when you're betting on a casino online, you're betting against the house. You're not betting against the other players at the casino, at least typically. So what HODL contracts are designed for, and what they're made for, is when you're betting against one of your peers, or you're using some kind of escrow contract with a peer, and you have a third party service who's running the escrow and can determine which of the two should get the money. Now, that doesn't really work in an online casino, because when you want to do your roulette or whatever, you want results right away. You don't want to have to wait for someone to take the other side of the bet. And so consequently, you're always betting against the house. The house is always taking the other side, and they take a cut. They increase the odds in their favor, or else charge you a fee. Now, if the house is running the oracle and the house is the person you are, or if the house is running the escrow and the house is also the person you're betting against, then they're in control of all the cards there. They've got, it's no different from a custodial solution. So I don't think the way we do gambling today is a good fit for HODL contracts. I think it would have to be modified.
So you're suggesting, though, that they would be running the escrow?
Yeah, that's what the gentleman who approached me, he wanted to like help him. He wanted me to help him put the software on his server so that his casino could run the escrow and only take people's money if they lost the whatever, like if they lost the roulette match or the the card game with 21, we have to hit 21 blackjack. It's like, if you lose the blackjack, then only then will we take the money. It was like, yeah, I could see how you could say then we're not custodial because we only take the money after this event, but they could they could take the money at any time because they're running the escrow. So it's like, I didn't think that was it didn't improve anything. So I didn't end up working with them.
But regardless of whether or not we use it for gaming, it's one market of many that could use our service.
Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, escrow seems like it has a lot of use cases, which is why I'm very bullish on the project.
Yeah, if the casino let somebody else run the oracle, or run the escrow, I mean, then it would be fine, because then they wouldn't have all the cards. They wouldn't be able to just take the money. They'd have to rely on the other person being honest.
How would that work in theory?
Well, Atomic Finance did this with DLCs, and we could do something similar. They did a prediction market based on the U.S. election, and Atomic Finance didn't run the DLC Oracle for that thing. They let somebody else run it. They let a company called SuredBits do it, and then people could make a bet on who would win the election, and Atomic Finance would settle Atomic Finance would take data from SuredBits and then use that to settle these contracts. So you could do the same thing. Like if we are running our API and a casino wanted to use it, a casino could have the casino is one party, their user is another party, and we're the escrow, we're the escrow who makes sure that either the casino or the player gets the money depending on who wins the roulette game or whatever they're playing. So in that situation, it might work. But that's a nice thing. We're releasing an open API with this so that anyone who wants to use it in any of their applications can do so. It doesn't have to be a human person who's sitting there pressing the buttons and giving the descriptions. You can have robots do this. You can have bots do it. And then you can automate the use of escrow contracts. That way we don't have to, and one of the benefits of that is then we don't have to come up with all the use cases. We just release an open API and we let developers use their imaginations and run wild with it.
Yeah, it's exponentially more use cases versus you having to kind of try and pick and choose individually and market to niche subsets of people.
Right.
Well, but one of the things I heard you saying is that, like, in the model of the theory for how a casino could use it properly is that you would act as the escrow. Are you not normally acting as the escrow in your Lightning Escrow service?
We are. At least we imagine that people will use our service. But the early casino who approached me, that he wanted me to help them install it on their server so they could run the escrow.
I see.
And then they also, they wanted to run the escrow API on their server, and then they also wanted to be the counterparty in each trade. And if you're running the escrow and you're the counterparty, then you have basically 2 out of 3 keys, which is a custodial situation.
Right, now I understand. So okay, but in the way that you envision actually kind of having this thing run, it would potentially make sense inside of a casino type marketplace.
As long as they were, as long as they were willing to not be the ones who decide on the outcome of the game, which I'm not sure if a casino would be willing to do that, but maybe some will.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to like look into. I mean, that's it's...
or they could do a matchmaking thing where it's like, we'll do a dice flip and we'll run the escrow, meaning the casino will run the escrow, and 2 people have to wait for each other to like agree on heads or tails. And then a casino could do a matchmaking service like that. But usually they don't like to do that because users don't like to wait.
Right.
They come to the website and want to place a bet and see immediate results. So the ones where you have to wait for someone to take the other side of the bet usually don't work very well.
Got it. Well, cool. All right. So I don't know. I think that covers a lot. I think we've pretty thoroughly, at least as far as my like non-technical brain works, I've kind of exhausted a lot of what I can think of to ask to dive down the rabbit hole. Do you guys have anything else that you just off the top of your heads you want to talk about? Let the world know.
As of right now, I want to make this clear that this company will have more than one product. And I don't want to say specifics just yet, but escrow is going to be one of the main ones that we have. But in the future, it'll be a subset.
So your product launch is essentially escrow with plans for kind of expansion into other territories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Super.
Yes?
Any final thoughts?
No.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, I look forward to having your product demo on Thursday at the Austin Bitcoin Club meetup, January 6th. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how our partnership here together at PlebLab with Lightning Escrow grows going forward. I'm like I said, I'm pretty bullish on the product. I'm pretty bullish on the team behind it. So if you guys need anything, let us know. We'll definitely be going into this early phase of Q1 hitting it hard. You guys are a handful of months behind some of the projects that came in kind of already established as a company, but I'm very optimistic with the way we've grown our network here that we can push hard and get you guys funded before the end of March.
That'd be great. I do say though that we work extremely fast, and I'm very surprised on how fast that we work together. So even though we're months behind other projects, we're actually ahead of schedule with for our actual goals.
That's awesome. Yeah, you guys are a great combo. Like I said, super bullish on the team, super bullish on the product. The world will know soon enough. So with that, we're signing off of Thrill of Lightning, episode 1, season 2. Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you Thursday.